Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to SP Reviews, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Logan J. Blackman, titled Prayer of a Broken Heart. And if we switch over to here, we have the track on SoundCloud. Now this is a little bit different. This is a classical piece, composed by Logan J. Blackman in loving memory of Larry and Laura Blackman. Premiered 2nd of the 17th, 17, conductor, Logan J. Blackman and University of Kentucky Symphony Orchestra. We're going to listen through this track from start to finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go. Okay. Straight to the minor key. Great development to that original bass line on top of those strings and woodwinds. Great build there. Charming. I mean, obviously it's very sad, but there's an underlying bass line with those drums there with that but almost pianissimo going on there. Really smooth textures to those strings on top. And the other melody's been played on top. Overall harmony. Fantastic shift here. There's a great warmth to this. There's a lot of love involved. That legato feel, that caress. Fantastic pause. Phenomenal dynamic range. It's nice to have that very mild, slow call and response to the main melody and the sides. Excellent, some more accents here. Oh. We're going to build it up a little bit. Phenomenal bass resonance there with those low instruments. Is this new section or further development of the first? This could be a movie soundtrack, you know what I mean? To be able to compose something that shows talent. Shows commitment and experience. Oh. Wow. I love how we're trying not to reach to the top. We're kind of reaching up and grasping for air as if we can't quite hit that ascent. Oh? Oh, wow. It's exhilarating. Those cymbal clashes as well with everything else. Phenomenal amount of drama to it. The barrel of those drums. With that brass in there. Sense of dissonance in there as if we're about to stop. Damn. That would have hit differently live. I'm assuming there may have been like an accident of some kind that occurred. And that was the point where that occurred, and now we're coming to terms with the loss. Is that like an oboe or a clarinet or something like that? It's so tasteful. This is what I miss about music. This type of music is that it has a lot more kind of range and perceived loudness and dynamic range than a lot of the stuff I listen to nowadays. Part of the adventure is the highs and the lows, you know? We're not trying to rush it, we're allowing it to naturally develop. It's a slow dance. It's a sad one. There's some major resonances and turns, but ultimately the overall harmonies is one of loss and sadness. Trying to ask why it occurred. We're building up to another crescendo. Just the oomph for those like tubas or trombones or something like that. They're low end, just how they bellow. To really sound out against the yeah, bring those strings. Yep, lots of cooler response within this composition. As if we're calling out and someone is answering back. I like the fact that we occasionally resolve back to the major. I think it balances out the intensity of those dissonant parts earlier on. And it also balances out the intensity of the furor of some of those parts with the brass coming in with those cymbals and those drums. This is gorgeous and patiently elegant. Phenomenal. Yes, this is very it's very pretty. We keep going da 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 da, and we have like another instrument comes in and it shifts the focus and then brings it back to that. It's a great way of recycling and revolving a melodic sequence like that, or a melody. Kind of like we're fluttering through the sky. What a phenomenal tribute to, I presume these are potentially Logan's parents. I could be wrong. Or I presume family members at least. Where are we going with this? The technical prowess to be able to play with these. Modulation of that move. Great work backing off those strings. I know, not like the brass, I mean like the low brass. Are we reintroducing some tension as if to battle the peaceful process we had before earlier on? Are we growing? Is there some sort of is there some development here, like outside of the actual music, thematically? Oh, and that flutter there, that ascension. We had that passage of flying, and now as if we're caught in the clouds in a thunderstorm or something like that. Incredible. Oh, we are unpredictable, aren't we? We think we're getting a little bit of sweetness, and then we get this bombastic bam bam fortissimo kind of, for at least forte kind of ba 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 ba. Great staccato passages there. I cannot believe it's been 11 minutes, 12 minutes. It's incredible. Really is utterly incredible to listen through a track like this and be able to sit with and appreciate it. You know, kudos to the University of Kentucky Symphony Orchestra, as well as for Logan with their work as a conductor, as well as their composing skill, their composition. I see a big spike in SoundCloud at this point. Suspicious of that. Don't know what that's going to be. Ooh, big finish. Oh. Hell, man. Oh, what a beautiful outro. Is this the conclusion? Has the heart mended? We've still got a little bit more, haven't we? Ah, we've got the finish with the crowd. That is so beautiful, man. I love the fact that the crowd enjoyed it. Because that was obviously a live performance. I think that's the thing that I've got to say about this part in particular. This was all live. As much as I appreciate the technical prowess and possibilities and opportunities that we have nowadays with the way that we, record, produce, do our music in a studio environment in a professional space, there is very little that can beat simply going out there, recording that live take, enjoying the people's best abilities and the chemistry between the instrumentalists involved, as well as the conductor and how they can put things forward and direct. And honestly, I'm very happy about this track. I'm glad I had the opportunity to review it. I'm impressed. Because this is my conclusion of my review of this track titled Prayer of a Broken Heart by Logan J. Blackman. This is of course a classical piece, and to be fair, I do not review a lot of these types of songs in these reviews. Often the tracks that I review are between 2 and 4 minutes, a mixture of hip hop or rock or metal or EDM or literally anything in between. I've done like 1,000 of these at this point. I have reviewed some classical music over my time as a music reviewer, and typically I have a great experience with them. Sometimes the difficulty can be that there is almost an exorbitant amount of information provided by the people who write it to almost overeducate the listener about what it is about, almost kind of, you know, guiding them by the ear towards a place where they should be able to understand what's going on. And while I appreciate that it can be scary to have a listener not know exactly where they're headed, you don't want them to become bored, you want them to appreciate your work. With this track by Logan, as a fellow Logan, I gotta say that this Logan nailed it. I mean, my understanding is that this very talented composer and conductor they've been involved with these orchestras since they were like 17 or something like that. I could be wrong. If I am, I'm gonna get told off. I'm kidding. But I'm that's a young age to get involved in that level of the music industry. I think that anyone who is able to compose something to this scale, 14 minutes is an incredible amount of time, but to get all the different components to sound the way that we want them to be musical, to actually have a semblance of musicality, to have these different sections make sense next to each other. The progression of this track, I firmly believe, is one where we start with a tentative kind of peacefulness, where we've got like a gentle kind of wonder for the world, but there are clouds on the horizon. And I think what occurs, especially at the end of the first third here, that A section, something bad happens. I'm not quite sure what, but there is an accident, and I think that's potentially where people pass away. And after that crash, that symbol there, we go through a mourning process and we struggle. We struggle as we go along. There are moments and peaks and troughs where we go through all these different emotions and difficulties with contemplating and understanding and coming to terms with the loss. And I think in that last half, we eventually manage to find solace. We have this prayer and we are able to find peace with what's occurred, come to terms with it, even if it's incredibly difficult to do so. And still, in the end, there was a lot of love in this arrangement and the way it was played. I want to give a shout out to the orchestra for performing this piece as well as they did, because I think that in regards to the story itself, from what I can take from the composition, they handled it magnificently. They understood where they needed to tone it down. They came up when it was important to do so. They had a great range with their performance. There was not a single note out of place. The structure of it at 14 minutes 23 is not typical, like a lot of songs, again, these days that I review are 2 to 4 minutes. But I don't need these songs to be short if they're this compelling and this engaging. And I think it's testament again to Logan J. Blackman's work. We were able to pull this off because even within classical music, you cannot take for granted that a listener, a fan of the music, is going to listen to 14 minutes. But I think this is a great first impression. I think this is a beautiful example of where you can just have the instruments perform without needing the focus of a vocalist involved. I firmly believe that if we'd had any vocals whatsoever, it would have been a detriment. Having this as a full-on orchestral instrumental was a smart thing to do. It leaves a sense again of ambiguity, but not enough that we become totally confused. We can see there in loving memory of Larry and Laura Blackman. I may be reading too much into it, overthinking it, with Prayer of a Broken Heart, but I do feel as if I understand the journey that we went on simply by listening to it. So I think I didn't realize that I started a new piece there. Please do go check out Logan's SoundCloud if you do enjoy his work. Obviously, again, as I mentioned before, I don't think there was a note out of place with the orchestra. The technical prowess displayed by everyone, from the strings to the brass to the flutters to like the woodwinds to the drums and the cymbals and everything like that. All these sections came together magnificently. There was a bit of cooler response occasionally in those quiet sections, and then they all sort of crescendoed and built up and built off of each other and took turns sort of like having the spotlight in those bigger parts where they're a bit more bombastic. You know, the melodies and concepts with these 8th note kind of grooves, aside from like the 16ths and the flutters, maybe the 32nd sort of you know, those like the trill parts. It's there was some simple melodies in there that were built upon and improved by the layering and how other instruments interacted and had secondary harmonies with them and stuff like that, along with the overall harmony. I don't think that I think that like a lack of constant percussion allowed for us just to let the music float and simmer. I think that pushing it forward was not the aim. Again, we're not writing a house track here, we're creating classical music, and you're allowed to just have a concept beat. You're not pushing for the listener's attention in the sense that, I mean, if you're already at 7 minutes, you probably got them for the whole time, right? I think this song, even at 14:25, was incredibly respectful of the listener's time. I think that there was a lot for the listener to appreciate, not only from like a performance perspective, from like a motif perspective, even across the various sections, again, with how easy, I think, how simple it was to understand what was going on or imagine what was going on, but also how pleasant it was, even though in those moments where there was some really dissonant sort of flat seconds or something going on, some bah, bah, bass, sort of staccato, like accented parts. There was enough shifts in perceived loudness in the dynamic range for that to remain sort of compelling, and I think that anyone who listened to this will be able to appreciate the work that went into it and just the song itself. Finally, the recording, mixing and mastering, the production was fantastic. I really enjoyed the tone of it. I think this was like a room mic, or there might have been various microphones scattered around the place just for them to get that tone regardless, to capture that room sound, including the audience there. Was a masterstroke. It sounds like a live performance. They absolutely smashed it. I have no complaints. There was a little bit of low-end resonance with the bass there, but I think nonetheless it was still absolutely fine, and I think that if they'd scooped that out or tried to over-treat it or sterilize it, it would have been detrimental. It would have sounded like a live performance with a bit less kind of oomph, and that would have been sad. I think sometimes you need to have the raw sound of something to really appreciate it. Again, I don't think the low-end resonance was a detriment. I think that's just a natural part of the instruments that we're playing and performing now. It was nice and loud in those, obviously in those sort of fortissimo parts. And obviously it was a lot quieter, so I don't know how I'm not going to normalize it. I'm not going to normalize this audio file, by the way. I'm going to allow for the dynamic range there. I think I spoke a bit more quietly in those quiet bits anyways, which is something you do when you're really in tune with the music, because you understand that you want to keep yourself quiet so that you don't interrupt the music. But anyways, look, that is effectively my review of Prayer of a Broken Heart by Logan J. Blackman. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show Logan J. Blackman some love via his various social medias and his SoundCloud page. Stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as either hell more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next review. Spiderhands Out.